A thick, unnatural fog curled through the deserted streets of Black Hollow, twisting between the skeletal remains of street lamps and crumbling facades. The town felt like a hushed corpse, waiting for the inevitable decay to take its final toll. Amelia Granger stood at the threshold of the Hollow King's corruption, her breath visible in the chilling air. Every shadow in Black Hollow seemed to pulse with a malevolent life, whispering unintelligible secrets she dared not understand. Lila Vargas stood beside her, gripping a map of the town's underground tunnels. "This is where Ethan's last message led us," Lila murmured, voice barely above a whisper. "If he's still fighting the possession, this might be our only chance to help him." A small slip of paper, scrawled in Ethan's unmistakable handwriting, had been pinned to the tavern's wooden door. Beneath the crimson moon, the price is paid in blood. It was both a warning and an invitation, but to what? They weren't sure. "Then we don't have much time," Amelia said, gripping the lantern tighter. The Hollow King's influence was growing, stretching into every unlit corner, its hold on Ethan tightening with each passing hour. If they failed tonight, the entity would rise fully beneath the blood-red moon, consuming not just Black Hollow, but everything beyond it, the town of Black Hollow. Hollow, once a place of old-world charm, had become a husk of its former self. The warm glow of lanterns no longer burned in shop windows, and laughter no longer spilled from the tavern's doors. Silence had taken root here, thick and absolute. Amelia recalled the stories from her childhood, the whispered legends about the Hollow King, an entity that demanded tribute lest it consume the land in endless night. It had always been a bedtime story meant to keep children from wandering too far into the woods. But now it was horrifyingly real. She and Lila pressed forward through the streets, heading for the entrance to the forgotten catacombs beneath the old church. They moved with quiet urgency, knowing that eyes, inhuman and unseen, watched them from the darkness. Amelia had always been able to see beyond the veil of the ordinary, but now the weight of that ability felt unbearable. She had spent years trying to understand the balance between her gift and her fear of it, but tonight she felt as if she stood on the edge of something irreversible. Lila, ever the historian, was the grounded one, logical, analytical, determined. But even she was rattled by the unnatural stillness of the town. She didn't believe in ghosts or malevolent forces before, but after everything they'd faced, she had no choice but to accept the horrors lurking beneath Black Hollow's surface. Ethan was the strongest of them, the one who had always been a skeptic. Yet he had fallen. If the Hollow King could take him, then what hope did Amelia have of resisting its call? They reached the church, its looming spires barely visible through the thick fog. The doors stood ajar, creaking on rusted hinges. The scent of damp earth and decay filled the air. The entrance should be beneath the altar, Lila said, consulting the map with trembling fingers. Amelia hesitated. The weight in the air was suffocating. Pressing against her skin, like unseen hands. Every instinct screamed at her to turn back, but she couldn't. As they stepped inside, a whisper slithered through the silence, curling into her ear like breath against her neck. "Welcome home." The church was silent, yet Amelia swore she could hear distant, rhythmic breathing from somewhere below. Lila moved toward the altar, pushing aside an ancient tapestry to reveal a rusted iron trapdoor. "We're sure about this?" Lila asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Amelia nodded. "We don't have a choice." Together they pried it open, revealing a steep descent into darkness. The air was thick, damp, and laced with the metallic tang of blood. With lanterns held high, they descended into the catacombs. The tunnels stretched far beneath Black Hollow, twisting and splitting into labyrinthine paths. Along the walls, strange carvings marked rituals long forgotten. At every turn, shadows seemed to shift, unnatural figures lingering at the edge of sight. Then they found the first thrall. A hunched figure, its face twisted in agony, stood motionless at a junction. Its hollow eyes snapped toward them, and then, with unnatural speed, it lunged. Lila barely managed to shove Amelia aside as the thing crashed into the wall. They ran. Ethan's voice echoed through the tunnels, distorted, layered with something that wasn't human. "Amelia, Lila, you should not have come." They skidded to a stop, hearts hammering. His silhouette emerged from the darkness, his face barely illuminated by flickering torchlight. His hands trembled, fingers twitching, as if fighting against invisible strings. "I left you clues," he said, voice thick with strain. "Run." Amelia's mind raced. Ethan was still fighting, but for how long? Could he be leading them to safety, or deeper into a trap? She thought of the relic, the only thing that could sever the Hollow King's hold. But where was it? Lila pointed toward a collapsed archway. "The relic has to be there. Ethan led us this far. We have to trust him." They barely made it past the thralls, the creatures growing more violent as the crimson moon neared its peak. When they reached the chamber beyond the rubble, Amelia gasped. The relic was there, an obsidian dagger pulsing with unnatural energy. But at its base, something was carved into the stone. A life must be given to wield it. Lila turned to Amelia, fear in her eyes. The truth was clear. A sacrifice was required, and time was running out. Amelia's pulse pounded in her ears. The crimson glow from above filtered through cracks in the chamber's ceiling, bathing the dagger in an eerie light. The thralls were gathering outside, their wretched moans reverberating through the tunnels. They had minutes, if that. "We have to make a choice," Lila whispered. "Now." Amelia swallowed hard. If she hesitated, they would all die. But could she take a life to save the world? Ethan staggered forward, his possession flickering in and out. "Use me," he rasped, eyes pleading. Amelia's grip tightened around the dagger, the weight of the decision crushing her. time was running out. Lila rifled through the ancient tome she had found near the altar, flipping pages with trembling hands. "There has to be another way," she muttered. Amelia, her hands shaking, raised the dagger and stared at Ethan. The Hollow King's influence surged through the chamber, a whispering tide, urging her forward. "What if this is exactly what he wants?" she asked. "A sacrifice to make him stronger?" Ethan collapsed to his knees, his body racked with violent tremors. "Amelia, please." The thralls pounded against the stone entrance. Dust rained from above. The dagger pulsed in Amelia's grip, sensing the choice before her. Lila's eyes widened as she pointed to an inscription on the wall. "The Hollow King's bond can be broken by turning the blade inward, onto the one who carries his mark." Ethan looked up, realization dawning on his face. He pulled back his sleeve, revealing the brand seared into his flesh, the mark of the Hollow King. A shudder ran through Amelia. If they struck Ethan, would it free him or kill him? Was this another deception? The thrall's howls grew deafening. The tunnel would not hold for much longer. "Do it," Ethan said, voice calm, "before I'm completely gone." Lila turned away, unable to watch. Amelia clenched her teeth, gripping the dagger so tightly her knuckles turned white. She lifted it high, hesitated, then plunged it downward. The moment the blade pierced Ethan's skin, the chamber exploded with light. The thralls screeched in agony, their forms dissolving into wisps of black smoke. The crimson moon above flickered, its glow dimming. Ethan gasped, arching his back as the Hollow King's grip shattered. Amelia yanked the blade free, horrified at what she had done. For a long moment, silence reigned. Ethan slumped forward, unconscious but alive. The mark on his arm had vanished. Amelia fell to her knees, chest heaving. Lila crept forward, touching Ethan's face. His skin was warm, his breathing steady. "We did it," Amelia whispered, her voice set hollow. But deep in the darkness something stirred. The Hollow King was not gone. Not yet. The silence felt unnatural, stretched too thin like a held breath. The chamber walls pulsed faintly, as though the Hollow King's presence still lingered beneath the surface. Amelia gripped Ethan's shoulders, shaking him lightly. "Ethan, wake up," she murmured, but he remained still. Lila stood, her back pressed against the cold stone, staring at the tunnel entrance. "It's not over," she whispered. "Something's still here." A deep tremor shook the chamber. Dust rained down. From the shadows beyond the altar, a figure began to form, a grotesque silhouette, shifting and writhing as if it were made of the darkness itself. The Hollow King's voice slithered through the chamber. "You think you have won? I am eternal." Amelia staggered backward as the entity fully took shape. It no longer had a human form. It was an abyss given life, a swirling mass of shadows with piercing ember-like eyes. The air around it cracked and warped, an oppressive force pressing down on them. Lila grabbed Amelia's wrist. "The dagger!" She started, but the Hollow King raised a clawed hand, and Lila was thrown violently against the stone wall. Amelia stood her ground, gripping the dagger tightly. "You're bound to this place," she said, voice steadier than she felt. "We severed your hold on Ethan. You have nothing left." The Hollow King laughed, a grating, bone-deep sound. "Foolish girl, I am not bound here. I am bound to you." A wave of realization crashed over Amelia. Her visions, her connection to the Hollow King, they had never been accidental. He had marked her long before she ever set foot in Black Hollow. "No," Amelia breathed. "I reject you." With every ounce of strength, she drove the dagger into the chamber floor where the Hollow King's form loomed. The stone cracked, releasing a blinding surge of light that swallowed the entity whole. The Hollow King shrieked, its form contorting, unraveling. Its essence was dragged downward into the abyss, its claws scraping against reality as it was sealed away. The crimson light faded, the oppressive weight lifted. The Hollow King was gone. Amelia collapsed, exhaustion hitting her like a crashing wave. Lila rushed to her side, helping her sit up. Ethan stirred, groaning as he regained consciousness. "We're alive," Lila whispered, half in disbelief. The tunnels around them groaned, the ancient structure beginning to give way. "We need to leave," Amelia said, forcing herself to her feet. Together, they stumbled back through the tunnels, the remnants of the Hollow King's domain crumbling behind them. By the time they reached the surface, the first light of dawn was breaking over Black Hollow. As they stepped into the cool morning air, Amelia looked back one last time. The town was quiet again, but something about it felt different. The nightmare had ended, but the scars it left would linger. She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the past night settle on her shoulders. "It's over," she said. Lila and Ethan exchanged a glance. Exhaustion etched into their features. "For now," Ethan muttered. They turned toward the rising sun, leaving the horrors of the Hollow King behind. But deep in her bones, Amelia knew this was only the beginning.